when a 10-year-old boy standing at a payphone outside a Citgo station in Hinton, West Virginia picked up the receiver, dialed 911 from memory without looking at the keypad, and then hung up before it connected. And did it again and again, 3 times in a row. Pick up, dial, hang up, pick up, dial, hang up. The man filling his truck 2 pumps over stopped watching casually and started watching carefully, because that wasn't a kid playing with a phone. That was a kid practicing. And when the man walked over and said, "You need to make that call for real?" the boy looked up at him and said, "Not yet, but I will tonight. I always do on Fridays." Not, "I might have to. I always do. On Fridays. Like clockwork, like a schedule." A 10-year-old boy standing at a payphone on a Thursday afternoon rehearsing a 911 call he already knew he'd have to make tomorrow night. And the word "always" came out of his mouth the way other kids say "always" about Saturday cartoons or Sunday pancakes. Routine, expected, just part of the week. The Citgo sat on Temple Street in Hinton, a 2-pump station with a convenience store attached and a payphone on the outside wall that somehow still worked in an age when payphones didn't exist anymore. Hinton was a railroad town in Summers County, population 2,500, sitting where the Greenbrier and New Rivers met. The kind of place where the train whistle was the town clock and everybody's truck needed a new muffler. Wade Presley was at the Citgo because his truck needed diesel and his wife needed milk, and both of those things were available at the same place. He was 44 years old, 6 feet 1 inch, 255 pounds, with a black beard going gray at the jaw and hands that had been running heavy equipment, dozers, excavators, track hose, for 22 years across every strip mine and reclamation site in southern West Virginia. He was vice president of the Summers Iron MC, an 11-member club that met at the VFW Hall on 2nd Avenue and rode the Gorge Roads on the first Saturday of every month. Subscribe to Asphalt Angels and hit that notification bell. Because this story starts with a boy rehearsing a 911 call at a payphone and a man who asked the question nobody else had asked. Wade walked to the payphone. The boy was small the way hungry kids are small, where the growth got interrupted somewhere and the body decided to wait. Brown hair that needed cutting, a green hoodie with a rip in the collar, jeans that were clean but faded past the point of fashion into the territory of only pair. He was holding the receiver in his left hand, and his right hand was flat against the metal body of the phone, fingers spread, like he was steadying himself. "You need to make that call for real?" The boy looked at him, sized him up the way kids who've learned to evaluate adults. Quick, full body, focused on the hands. Whatever he saw passed the test. "Not yet, but I will tonight." "Well, tomorrow night." Fridays are the bad nights. He gets paid on Fridays and he drinks on Fridays, and after he drinks, he gets loud, and after he gets loud, he gets mean, and after he gets mean, my mom gets hurt, and after my mom gets hurt, I call 911. That's how Fridays go. Every Friday. I've been calling since I was 7. Since you were 7? I'm 10 now, so 3 years. I can do it without thinking. 911, then I give the address, 14 Ballingy Road. Then I say, "There's a domestic disturbance and someone is hurt. Please send someone." The dispatcher knows me. Her name is Connie. She recognizes my voice. Last time she said, "Is this my Friday boy?" And I said yes, and she said help was on the way. She calls me her Friday boy. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Asphalt Angels. Because a 10-year-old boy had a nickname at the 911 dispatch center. The dispatcher knew his voice. That's how many times he'd called. Wade leaned against the wall next to the payphone. He didn't crowd the boy. He gave him space the way you give space to someone who's used to not having any. What's your name? Eli. Eli Matney. Eli, who's he? Dale. Dale Sizemore, my mom's boyfriend. He's lived with us since I was 6. He moved in, and it was okay for a little while, and then it wasn't okay, and then it was really not okay, and now it's just Fridays. Used to be every night, but now it's mostly Fridays. He saves it up, I think, like he holds it all week, and then Friday comes, and the paycheck comes, and the bottle comes, and then it all comes out. And you call 911. Every time. My mom can't call because she can't always get to the phone. And my little sister, Bree, she's 6. She hides in the closet in our room with her hands over her ears, and I told her that's her job. That's what she does. She hides and covers her ears, and doesn't come out until I tell her it's safe. My job is the phone. I'm the one who calls. Where's the phone in your house? We don't have one. Dale took my mom's phone in January, said she was calling people behind his back. She wasn't. She was calling her sister in Beckley. But he took it and broke it, and now there's no phone in the house, so I use this one. He tapped the payphone. It's free for 911. You don't need a quarter. I walk here from the house. It's about a 10-minute walk. I leave after it starts, and I walk here, and I call, and then I walk home, and by the time I get home the sirens are coming, or they're already there. You leave the house while it's happening? I have to. There's no phone inside. Bree hides and I leave. I run most of the way. It takes me about 7 minutes if I run. The payphone is the closest one. There used to be one at the post office, but they took it out last year, so now this is the only one. If they take this one out, I don't know what I'll do. That's why I come here and practice. To make sure it still works. I check it every Thursday. If it's broken on Friday, I need a backup plan. What's the backup plan? I don't have one yet. That's what I'm working on. A 10-year-old boy standing at a payphone, checking it weekly like a maintenance routine, because it was the only connection between his mother getting hurt and help arriving. And he was working on a backup plan. At 10. If you're watching this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes 1 second, and helps these stories reach the people who need them. Now, back to the story. Wade took out his phone. Eli, how many times have you called 911? This year? Maybe 8 times? 9. I don't count anymore. I used to count. When I was 7 and 8, I counted because it felt important, like keeping score. I stopped counting when I was 9 because the number got too high and it made me feel bad. Do the police come every time? Every time. They come and they talk to my mom, and she says she fell or she walked into a door, and they write it down, and sometimes Dale's already gone. He leaves right after, drives to his buddy's house in Alderson, stays there until Sunday. The police tell my mom about resources and shelters, and she nods and takes the paper, and then nothing changes. They arrested Dale twice. He was back both times within a week. My mom let him back. Why? Because she's scared of what happens if he stays, and she's scared of what happens if he leaves. At least when he's there, she knows where the bad is. That's what she told me once. At least I know where the bad is. I think about that a lot. She'd rather know where the bad is than wonder where it went. Wade dialed 911. Not to practice. For real. Summers County 911. What's your emergency? My name is Wade Presley. I'm at the Citgo station on Temple Street in Hinton. I've got a 10-year-old boy named Eli Matney here, who's been calling 911 on a regular basis from this payphone to report domestic violence at his residence, 14 Ballingy Road. He says it happens every Friday night. He says the perpetrator is Dale Sizemore, his mother's boyfriend. This child has been the sole emergency contact for his household for 3 years. He walks here alone at night to make these calls. I'm requesting a deputy and CPS at this location. There was a pause on the line. Then, did you say the boy calls from the payphone on Temple? Yes. Is his name Eli? Yes. Another pause. Sir, I know this child. I've taken his calls. My name is Connie. I've taken, I don't know how many of his calls. I didn't know he was 10. He sounds older on the phone. He's very calm, very clear. I always thought, I didn't know he was walking to a payphone. I thought he was calling from the house. He's calling from a payphone because there's no phone in the house. He walks here, at night, during the incident. He leaves his 6-year-old sister hiding in a closet and walks to this payphone to call you. Connie was quiet for 4 seconds. 4 seconds of a 911 dispatcher who'd been taking calls for years, processing the fact that her Friday boy, the calm, clear voice on the other end of the line, who always gave the address perfectly and said domestic disturbance like an adult, was a 10-year-old child walking alone at night to a gas station payphone. I'm dispatching now. Deputy en route. I'm flagging this for immediate CPS response. Thank you, Connie. Sir, tell him Connie says he doesn't have to call anymore. If Asphalt Angels has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. Now, back to the ending. Wade texted the Summers Iron MC group chat. Citgo on Temple. 10-year-old kid. Been calling 911 for his mom every Friday for 3 years. Need brothers here. 2 brothers showed up, Ketchum and Farley. Ketchum brought a bag of food from the gas station. Chips, a sandwich, a Gatorade, a pack of donuts. Farley brought a flannel jacket from his truck. Eli put the jacket on and ate the sandwich standing at the payphone, leaning against the wall where he'd leaned 100 times before. You eat at that payphone a lot? Wade asked. Sometimes I bring crackers. When I come to check the phone on Thursdays, I bring a snack. It's kind of... This sounds weird. It's kind of my spot. I know it's a payphone at a gas station, but it's the place where I do the thing that helps, so it feels like mine. Ketchum, who was 39, a plumber, and had a daughter Bree's age, stood at the gas pump and looked at the payphone and at the boy eating a sandwich next to it, and turned his back and walked to his truck and sat in the driver's seat for about a minute. When he came back, his eyes were red, but he didn't say anything about it, and nobody asked. Farley stood by the air pump with his arms crossed, watching Temple Street, the way you watch a street when you're expecting someone you don't want to see. Dale didn't come, but Farley watched anyway, because that's what you do when there's a kid at a payphone and a name attached to the reason he's there. A Summers County deputy arrived, a tall man named Estes, who looked at Eli and then looked at the payphone and then looked back at Eli. You're the Friday caller. Yes, sir. I've responded to your calls. I've been to your house. I didn't know it was a kid calling. I sound older on the phone. Connie says so. You do, son. You sound about 30. CPS caseworker Rhonda Jeffers arrived, a compact woman with reading glasses on a chain who'd been doing child services in Summers County for 12 years. She sat with Eli on the curb outside the Citgo and let him talk. He told her everything: the Fridays, the payphone, Bree in the closet, the broken phone, the 10-minute walk, the backup plan he didn't have. Eli, has Dale ever directed his anger toward you or your sister? He doesn't pay attention to me. I'm invisible to him. He focuses on my mom. I think he forgets I exist, which is fine because forgetting me means not noticing me, and I'll take that deal. And Bree? I put her in the closet before it starts. She stays there. She's good at being quiet. She's 6, and she's better at being quiet than most adults. That's not a good thing, is it? No, baby. That's not a good thing. Rhonda went to 14 Ballingy Road. She came back an hour later and pulled the deputy aside. Wade was close enough to hear. The house shows clear signs of long-term domestic disturbance, damage to interior walls, kitchen chair with a broken leg. The mother, Crystal Matney, is home. She has visible signs of recent distress that are inconsistent with her explanation. Dale Sizemore is not present. He's apparently at work. Crystal broke down when I told her Eli had been calling 911 from the payphone. She didn't know. She thought he was hiding in his room with Bree. She didn't know he was walking to a gas station in the dark. Crystal's response, as relayed later. My son has been saving my life every Friday night for 3 years, and I didn't even know how. I thought the neighbors were calling. I thought someone on the street heard it. It was my boy. It was always my boy, walking in the dark to a payphone. She said it again, quieter. In the dark, my 10-year-old, walking past the houses and the empty lots and the railroad tracks in the dark to get to a phone because I let a man break mine. I let a man break my phone, and my boy fixed the problem himself. He fixed it at 7. What was I doing at 7? Playing. He was learning 911. Dale Sizemore, 38, was arrested at his workplace that afternoon. Charges included domestic battery, child endangerment, destruction of property, and contributing to conditions injurious to the welfare of minors. He was held without bond due to prior arrests and violation of a previous protection order that had expired and not been renewed. His employer said Dale had been a reliable worker. The deputy said a lot of people are reliable at work and unreliable at home, and the distance between those two things is where families fall apart. Crystal Matney was not arrested. She was connected with the Summers County Family Crisis Center and a DV advocate named Pam, who specialized in safety planning. Crystal and the kids were moved to a shelter that night, a house on the other side of Hinton, with an address that wasn't 14 Ballingy Road, and a Friday that didn't mean anything worse than pizza night. Eli stood in the shelter's hallway that first night and looked at the phone on the wall, a real phone, mounted on the wall between the kitchen and the living room. Cream-colored, push-button, with a cord that stretched to the couch. There's a phone. There's a phone, Crystal said. Inside the house. Inside the house. So if something happens, I don't have to walk anywhere. Nothing's going to happen, Eli. But if it did, you wouldn't have to walk anywhere. Can I pick it up, just to hear the dial tone? Yeah, baby. You can pick it up. Eli picked up the receiver. He held it to his ear and listened to the dial tone for about 10 seconds. Then he hung it up. Then he picked it up again and listened again, like the payphone check. But this time he was checking because it was new, not because it might be gone tomorrow. It works. It works. Eli looked at the phone for a long time. Then he walked to his room, a room with 2 twin beds, one for him and one for Bree. And he lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling and said to Bree, "You can come out of the closet now." Bree was already on her bed. "There's no closet, Eli." "Yeah, I know. I just wanted to say it." The Summers Iron MC started a program called Friday Boy, named for what the dispatcher called Eli. The program partnered with the County 911 Center to flag repeat callers, specifically callers who called from the same number about the same address more than twice. The program cross-referenced those calls with child welfare records to identify households where children might be acting as de facto emergency responders. The card read, "If a child knows your number by heart, something is wrong at home." 6 months later, Crystal and the kids were in a 2-bedroom apartment in Hinton, different part of town, new address, new phone. Crystal was working part-time at the hospital cafeteria and meeting with Pam twice a week. Dale was in jail, awaiting trial after violating the new protection order by driving past the old house on Ballingy Road. Eli was in 5th grade. His teacher said he was smart. Scary smart. The kind of smart that comes from having to figure out adult problems before you're tall enough to reach the top shelf. He joined the chess club because he liked thinking 3 moves ahead. His coach said he was the most patient player on the team. He never rushes. He waits, he watches, then he moves. Bree was in 1st grade. She talked now. Not just words, sentences, paragraphs, stories. The counselor at the shelter said Bree didn't speak for the first 2 weeks. Then one morning she told the kitchen volunteer the entire plot of Frozen unprompted, and the volunteer cried because it was the most beautiful 11-minute monologue she'd ever heard from a 6-year-old. Crystal said Bree still didn't like closets. She wouldn't go in one. At the apartment, her coat hung on a hook by the door because the hall closet made her freeze up. She'd stand in front of it, and her hands would go to her ears without her realizing it. Muscle memory from 3 years of Fridays. The counselor said that was normal. The counselor said the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Bree was 6, and her body had already memorized a survival pattern. It would take time, but she was talking now, and talking was the opposite of hiding, and every word was a step out of a closet she never had to go back into. Eli visited Wade at job sites sometimes, when Crystal drove through town. He liked watching the excavators, the big arms swinging, the tracks grinding, the earth moving. Wade let him sit in the cab once and work the joystick. Eli moved the arms slow and careful and set the bucket down on the dirt like he was placing a glass on a table. "You're a natural," Wade said. "I'm careful. That's different." "How's it different?" "Natural means you don't think about it. Careful means you think about everything. I think about everything. I always have. When you're the one who calls 911, you learn to pay attention to everything because missing something means being late, and being late means—" He stopped. "I'm working on not thinking like that anymore. The counselor says I can let go of being the lookout, but it's hard to stop watching when watching is the thing that kept everybody safe." "It's like a video game," Eli said another time, watching the excavator from the ground. "It's better than a video game. It's real. I like real now. I didn't used to. Real used to be bad. Now real is okay." One Friday evening, 6 months after the Citgo, Eli was sitting at the kitchen table in the apartment doing homework. Crystal was making spaghetti. Bree was on the floor drawing. The phone rang. Crystal answered it. It was Pam, the DV advocate, checking in. Eli looked up when the phone rang. Just for a second. A reflex. Checking. Then he went back to his homework. Crystal noticed. After she hung up, she sat down across from him. "You looked at the phone." "Yeah." "You still check." "Not like before. Before, the phone ringing meant the after. Somebody calling to check, somebody calling to follow up. Now it's just Pam, or Aunt Debbie, or the school. Normal reasons. I know that. But my body still checks. The counselor says that'll fade. She says my body learned a pattern, and it takes time to learn a new one." "How much time?" "She said everybody's different. She said some people unlearn it in months, and some people carry it for years. She said the important thing is that I don't have to carry it alone anymore." Crystal reached across the table and put her hand on his. "You never should have carried it at all." "Maybe not, but I'm glad I did. Because if I didn't carry it, who would have called?" Crystal didn't have an answer for that, because the answer was nobody. Nobody would have called. A 10-year-old boy had been the only person in a family of 3 who had the means and the will to pick up a phone and say help. And he did it every Friday for 3 years. And the system that was supposed to protect his mother kept returning her to the person who was hurting her. And a payphone at a Citgo station was the thin line between a family that survived and one that didn't. One afternoon, Wade drove past the Citgo on Temple Street. The payphone was still there. He pulled over and looked at it. A metal box on a wall with a receiver and a keypad and a cord that was fraying at the base. The most important piece of infrastructure in one boy's life for 3 years. The place where a 10-year-old stood in the dark and dialed 3 numbers that meant someone was coming. He thought about calling someone from it. He didn't. He just looked at it and got back in his truck and drove home. Be the one who hears a child practicing and understands what the practice is for. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that the calmest voice on the 911 line might belong to a child who's been calling longer than anyone knows, please share it. Subscribe to Asphalt Angels for more stories proving that sometimes a payphone at a gas station is the only lifeline a kid has. Tell us in the comments, have you ever known a child who carried too much too young?